Hi everybody, in this particular short video I'd like to kind of explore a little bit the concept of motivation and how do you motivate a client. I think that very question makes it sound like motivation is something that you can do to a client, and I think some trainers think that's kind of their job. I'm going to motivate my client. But what do we actually mean by that? Is motivation something we can impose on the client? Or is it a skill that you have to possess as a trainer? I would suggest it is a skill you have, but it's not an intrinsic thing. Motivation isn't something you learn. It comes as a whole package, because the only person that can actually, from a purely technical perspective, motivate a client is the client themselves. They have to find an internal motivation, a reason for doing something, a reason for changing, a reason for carrying on. That's their internal motivation. So it comes from within, and the PT can provide the right environment for the client to find that internal motivation. So you can't impose motivation on a client. And I think the other thing, and any experienced trainer would agree with this, is what motivates one individual will clearly demotivate somebody else. So some people respond really well to kind of almost like the military style of training, shouting, bawling, come on, you can do this. And then other clients will respond more to a kind of lovey-dovey, touchy-feely. So an experienced trainer does get a feel for what works with a client. But in terms of what will work with every client, there are a couple of things that you have to have in place. And some of it comes from motivational interviewing. Now, some trainers do this naturally. They don't realize that's what they're doing, but they've got a natural ability to engage. The first stage of motivational interviewing in terms of a process is engagement with the client. And if you've got really good engagement with the client, you actually won't need any type of assessment as such. Certainly in terms of psychology, lifestyle, that type of thing. You're going to need physical assessments if you're looking at programming. But when I'm talking about the kind of psychological side, the mental side, if you like, then good engagement will actually answer a lot of the type of assessment questions you would maybe like to ask. And you'll find out a lot about the individual, their lifestyle, what their motivations are. And this is the key thing. It's listening. And key aspect of motivational interviewing is what we would call active listening. So just listening to what the client says, and watching their body movements and their facial expressions. People light up when they find things that are exciting. You'll see their eyes widen, a smile comes to us, they relax. So observing and listening is a real key skill for a trainer or a coach to master. So good engagement is absolutely crucial. Now, you use engagement first time you ever meet a client, but actually in motivational interviewing, you learn that you re-engage with the client at all time. Every time you meet that client, you're going to re-engage. And the purpose of that is basically to almost like check in, make sure nothing's changed. You don't make an assumption that since you last saw them, everything is exactly the same. And so by doing even just a brief re-engagement, you kind of check everything's in place. And so engagement is a key skill. And certainly if we start to meet resistance with a client, things feel a bit not right. You kind of get a feeling in yourself that, maybe I've upset them a bit here. By re-engaging, you can kind of get everything back on track. So engagement and the skills of engagement, really, really important in terms of finding out what is going to be the motivational cues for that client. The other thing a PT coach can have in their armory is psychometric testing. Now, within the psychometric test, there's some real important things. And one of the most important things within the psychometric test is the processes of change. Data from the processes of change will tell you which processes a client's going to favour in terms of learning, how they're being taught, how they take on board information. So if you know which processes the client's going to favour, you can very much tailor your program to those processes. And in my doctoral research, this is just what the PTs did. They looked at the processes of change and then as best they could, they adapted their program so as it was strong in the areas that the client favored. Now, the beauty of that is, if you do that, that means when you're educating, when you're giving information, when you're working with the client, if you're using the processes that the client favors, this will increase their self-efficacy. And so as their self-efficacy goes up, or if you want to call it self-confidence, self-belief, obviously their motivation increases as well, because they're feeling more confident, they're more motivated to carry on. And we do know that as self-efficacy increases, people move forward through the stages of change. So there's a strong positive correlation between efficacy and behavioural change in terms of movement through the stages of change. Data supports that, both from my initial study and from research that I did in New Zealand at a later date with the Maori and South Pacific Islanders. So those are two kind of key things that a PT or a coach has got in their armoury, and they work. So motivation isn't something you do to a client, it's something you almost kind of help the client find for themselves. What doesn't work though, and I think this is equally as important, I think one of the key things that will not work is you trying to impose your own beliefs and values onto that client. Now, a lot of personal trainers, not all, but I am generalising a bit here, they like going to the gym, they enjoy exercise, they're comfortable in that environment, they are quite vain in some cases, not all, I'm just a generality here. And then when we look at their nutrition, some of them can be quite extreme. You see people planning for 7 days and they're meal planning and meal prep, and that's great if that works for you. But I'm telling you now, that is not most of your clients. And when I used to train personal trainers at level 3, one of the things I would always try and highlight to them is, you're a bit odd. And they kind of look a bit surprised. Oh, what do you mean by that? Well, you're fit, your BMI's most probably about right, you enjoy exercise, and you look after your diet. That puts you in the lower kind of 10% of the population, most probably an even smaller group, because not a large percentage of the UK population certainly even exercise regularly. So if you put all those things together, most personal trainers are a bit odd. And that's fine, but the key thing to remember is you are a bit odd, and you're not thinking the way most of your clients are. Your clients find going to the gym a chore. It's most probably why they've employed you as a personal trainer. It's so there's an appointment in the diary, so it's like, well, I've got to turn up, I've paid for the session. But given free choice, there's a good chance they'd find another thing to do instead of going to the gym or doing the exercise or having the healthy choice in terms of nutrition. So always bear that in mind, and don't try and impose your beliefs and values just because you think going to the gym is a good thing and it's great for you and everything, and that is totally your beliefs and you 100% believe it. A lot of your clients won't. And the other thing that we know doesn't work is scare tactics. So saying to somebody, well, if you don't get fit, if you don't lose weight, you're going to have a heart attack or you're going to have a stroke or whatever, they don't care. They most probably already know that. It's not in their belief system. It's quite interesting that a lot of public health research has looked into this and found that basically scare tactics don't work. There's kind of a wealth of evidence to say, look, scare tactics are not going to work when it comes to a client. Now, again, why is that important? It does intrigue me a bit that we persist with putting pictures of unhealthy and diseased organs on cigarette packets, because if we know from public health education and research that scare tactics don't work, why do we persist with that? That's not evidence-based practice, but maybe that's for another post someday. Anyway, so scare tactics don't work. And I think, as I've said in a previous post or blog, I've certainly said it enough times on the behaviour change workshop, people do not like being should on. Bill Miller, one of the founders of MI, it's one of his favourite phrases. People do not like being should on. In other words, saying to people, you should do this, you should do that, you want to do that, you need to do this. Those type of tactics will not work. And in fact, what they will do is you'll get pushback from the client. So you'll say, oh, you need to do this. They will then go, oh, well, I can't do this because of blah, blah, blah. So they can actually find the alternative argument, and it strengthens that alternative argument. So that type of approach isn't going to work. What we're really looking for here is, and what is going to work is good engagement, coming on board, come alongside the client. So be there for them, show accurate empathy. You don't have to put yourself in their shoes, but you do have to understand where they're coming from and respect their autonomy, their right to make their own decisions. Now, if you've got good engagement, you're showing very good empathy, you've got accurate empathy, and you come alongside and you're now guiding that client, with time, they will trust you, they will listen to what you're telling them in terms of education and guidance, and they will then make decisions for themselves. Hopefully those are decisions that move them in the right direction as far as getting fitter, losing weight, whatever it might be. But the fact of the matter is, your good engagement, your empathy and your guiding skills are helping them find their own motivation. And that's how you motivate a client. Hope you found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you on the kind of next kind of virtual meeting, as it were. Cheers for now.